The fake HOA officer made one mistake before he ever grabbed my wife at our gate. He wore a badge with no number, no county seal, no issuing agency, just 2 words stamped on cheap metal: community enforcement. Diane Whitaker stood behind him like she had brought the law to my driveway. My wife, Sarah, was pale, holding her phone, telling them to leave. Then one of them reached for her wrist. I was in the back shed, watching everything through the gate camera. I could have run outside. I could have yelled. But Diane wanted exactly that. So I saved the footage, called the sheriff, and waited. 10 minutes later, that badge was no longer on his chest. It was sitting on the hood of a sheriff's cruiser. And the question, who issued this, opened a money trail Diane never wanted her neighbors to see. If you saw a fake badge at your private gate, would you argue with it? Or let the sheriff ask the question? My name is Caleb Mercer. I spent 22 years in the Navy, and after I retired, I did security compliance work for schools, small businesses, and logistics companies. Not the flashy kind of security people brag about, the boring kind. Cameras, access logs, incident reports, authority chains. The difference between someone who can observe and someone who can order. That difference matters. A private security guard can wear a uniform. He can watch. He can report. But he cannot order my wife to open a private gate. He cannot threaten her with obstruction. And he definitely cannot imply county authority on land his HOA does not own. Diane either did not know that, or she knew and thought nobody would challenge her. Our place sat at the end of Black Pine Road, a gravel lane that ran through 15 acres Sarah and I bought after my retirement. It was not fancy. No stone pillars. No mansion. No lakefront view. Just a small house with old gutters, a crooked porch step, a line of trees, and enough quiet for Sarah to breathe. That last part mattered most. 3 years before we bought the place, Sarah was in a bad car accident on a rainy 2-lane road outside Asheville. She recovered, mostly. But after that, unexpected people at the door made her freeze. Loud knocks changed her breathing. Men walking too close made her go quiet in a way I hated seeing. So when she found that house at the end of a private road, she loved it for one reason: privacy. The seller told us Black Pine Road was private. Our closing attorney checked it. I checked it too, because old habits die hard. Every record I saw before closing said the same thing. The road was ours, from the county marker to the garage. Willow Ridge Estates, the HOA next door, had no role in it. We were not members. We did not use their pool. We did not use their clubhouse. We did not attend their meetings. We did not vote for their board. And they did not send us bills. For 6 months, that was enough. Then Willow Ridge residents started using our road as a shortcut. At first, it was 1 or 2 cars a week. Then golf carts. Then delivery vans. Then a teenager in a lifted truck came around the bend too fast and almost hit Sarah while she was carrying mulch from the shed. That was the day she asked if we could put up a gate. Not because she hated the neighbors. Not because she wanted a fight. She just said, "I want one place where people can't come in like they own us." So I built a simple gate, 2 cedar posts, a steel crossbar, a keypad, a small private road sign, and cameras, because I learned a long time ago that people behave differently when they know the truth has a memory. For almost 2 months, the gate did exactly what it was supposed to do. Then Diane Whitaker walked up my road in designer boots, looked at the gate, and said, "You're going to need to remove that." Not hello, not maybe we have a misunderstanding. Just, "You're going to need to remove that." I was tightening a hinge plate when she said it. I looked at her, then at the gate, then back at her. Why would I do that? She smiled like she had been waiting for the question. Because this road is part of our emergency access plan. That was the first lie. It would not be the last. Diane had the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no by someone who means it. She was in her late 50s, maybe early 60s, but she dressed like every sidewalk was the entrance to a country club. White sunglasses, perfect nails, cream-colored vest. Clipboard pressed against her chest like titles and paper gave her ownership. "I'm the president of the Willow Ridge HOA," she said. "I know," I told her. That bothered her. People like Diane enjoy introductions because titles do most of the work for them. She tapped her clipboard. "Then you know we have a responsibility to maintain neighborhood safety." "I'm not in your neighborhood." Her smile thinned. "That road connects to our north corridor." "No, it borders your north corridor. It doesn't connect to it. It's listed on our internal access map. Your internal map doesn't change my deed." That was the first time I saw the real Diane. Not the polished HOA president. Not the woman who said community every third sentence. The real Diane. The one who heard the word no and treated it like an insult. She looked past me at the house. At minimum, we'll need the gate code. Sarah was on the porch behind me, and I could feel how still she had gone. You're not getting the gate code, I said. Diane tilted her head. Mr. Mercer, refusing emergency access creates liability. Actual emergency services already have a contact procedure. Fire and sheriff can reach me. The HOA cannot. Her jaw moved once. You don't seem to understand how communities work. I understand property lines. That was when she looked down at my boots. They were muddy from setting posts after a rain. My old truck was behind me, dented and dusty, with a toolbox bolted into the bed. I was wearing a faded navy sweatshirt and work gloves with a hole in the thumb. Diane took all of that in, and in her mind, she decided who I was. I was not her kind of homeowner. I was not polished. I was not impressed. And I was not supposed to own land she wanted. Men like you, she said, always think owning a little dirt means you can ignore the people around you. Sarah stepped off the porch. Don't talk to my husband like that. Diane turned to her with a soft voice that was worse than yelling. Oh, honey, I'm trying to help you. This kind of attitude causes problems with property values. There it was. Property values. The phrase people like Diane use when they want to insult you without sounding rude. I took off my gloves. Diane, I'm going to say this once. This road is private. This gate is private. This property is outside your HOA. If you have a legal document that says otherwise, mail it to me. She smiled again. We'll be in touch. I watched her walk back down the gravel road. Sarah stood beside me with her arms folded. She's not done, she said. No, I said. She's just getting started. That afternoon, I opened a folder on my computer and named it Willow Ridge Access Claim. I did not know yet how large that folder would get. 3 days later, the first letter arrived. It had the HOA seal at the top, even though I was not a member. The subject line read, Emergency Access Violation Notice. They gave me 48 hours to provide the gate code or remove the gate. They cited community standards, neighborhood safety, HOA bylaws, and right there in the second paragraph was the first real mistake. They listed the wrong parcel number. Not a typo, a completely different lot. A Willow Ridge lot. Inside the HOA, Sarah saw me staring at the page. What is it? I turned the letter toward her. They're pretending our land is one of theirs. She looked from the letter to me. Can they do that? I put the letter in the folder. They can try. The morning the fake officers came, I was in the back shed repairing a motion light. Sarah had gone into town for groceries. At 9:17, she texted me. On my way back. Want anything else? I typed coffee creamer. Then I deleted it, because we already had 2 in the fridge. At 9:31, the gate camera sent a motion alert. I almost ignored it. Deer triggered that camera all the time. So did leaves when the wind hit just right. Then my phone buzzed again. And again. 3 alerts in a row. I opened the camera app. Sarah's blue Subaru was stopped outside the gate. 2 men stood in front of it. Both wore dark shirts with patches on the sleeves. One had a badge clipped to his chest. The other had a radio on his shoulder and a black folder in his hand. Diane stood behind them. Of course she did. I turned up the audio. One of the men said, Ma'am, step out of the vehicle. Sarah's voice shook, but she held her ground. This is my driveway. This is a restricted community access point, he said. No, it isn't. This is our private gate. Diane stepped closer. Sarah, don't make this difficult. That made my hands stop moving. Diane had no right to use my wife's first name like they were friends. Sarah said, I'm going home. The man with the badge put his hand on the keypad. Sarah reached for her phone. Don't touch that. I'm calling Caleb. The second man stepped toward her car door. Ma'am, you are interfering with an authorized HOA safety inspection. Sarah got out of the car. Not because he had the right to order her. Because she was scared, and she did not want to be trapped inside. She held her phone in front of her. You need to leave. That was when the first man reached out and grabbed her wrist. Not in some dramatic movie way. Not enough to throw her. But enough. Enough to make her drop the grocery receipt. Enough to make her pull back. Enough to make every calm part of me go very still. Diane said, She's being non-compliant. I was already moving, but I stopped at the side door. That was what Diane wanted. She wanted noise. She wanted anger. She wanted one frame of me looking like the dangerous veteran she had probably been describing in emails. So I opened the camera feed on my phone. I hit save. Then I called 911. This is Caleb Mercer at 184 Black Pine Road, I said. There are 2 private individuals at my gate, identifying themselves as officers. One has touched my wife. They are on private property. I need a sheriff's unit. The dispatcher asked if anyone was armed. I don't see a weapon, I said. I am not approaching. Cameras are recording. Then I called Sheriff Donnelly directly. I had met him twice before. Once at a veterans charity breakfast, and once when I helped the county school district review camera coverage after a break-in. He answered on the third ring. Caleb? Sheriff, I have 2 men at my gate wearing badges and claiming HOA authority. There was a pause. HOA authority? Yes, sir. Another pause. Stay back until my deputy arrives. I am. And Caleb? Yes? Save everything. I already am. By the time I reached the porch, Sarah was standing near her car with her arms wrapped around herself. Diane was talking loudly now, performing for the cameras she did not know were there. This is exactly why we need compliance, Diane said. Unstable residents create unsafe conditions. Unstable. There it was. That word was not an accident. That word was for the report. The man with the fake badge turned toward the house and saw me on the porch. You Caleb Mercer? He called. I am. You need to come open this gate. No. This is an HOA enforcement action. No, it isn't. He pointed at his badge. You want to interfere with officers? I looked at the badge. Cheap metal. No county seal. No badge number. No issuing agency. Just the words, community enforcement. Then I looked at Diane. She was smiling. She thought the badge was the weapon. She had no idea it was evidence. The first deputy arrived 7 minutes later. His name was Deputy Lane. Young guy. Careful eyes. The kind of officer who still believed writing things down correctly mattered. The fake officers changed their posture the moment the cruiser pulled up. That told me plenty. Real authority does not get nervous when real authority arrives. Diane stepped forward first. Deputy, thank goodness. We have a resident refusing emergency access and threatening HOA officers. I stayed on the porch. Sarah stood near the gate, pale but steady. Deputy Lane looked from Diane to the men in uniforms. HOA officers? He asked. The man with the badge lifted his chin. Community Enforcement Unit. Lane looked at the badge. Through who? The man blinked. Through Willow Ridge. That's an HOA. Yes. Lane looked at Diane. Ma'am, are these law enforcement officers? Diane smiled the way people smile when they are trying to slide past a direct question. They are authorized safety personnel. That wasn't my question. Her face tightened. Deputy Lane turned to me. Mr. Mercer, did you call? Yes. What happened? I held up my phone. I have video from 3 cameras. I'd rather show you than argue. Diane cut in. He's edited everything. He's been hostile from the beginning. Lane looked at her. Ma'am, please let him answer. That was the first time Diane looked worried. I walked down the porch steps slowly, keeping my hands visible. I knew exactly how Diane wanted this to look. Angry veteran. Threatening posture. Unsafe resident. I gave Lane my phone. The footage showed Sarah arriving. It showed the men blocking her. It showed the first man putting his hand on the keypad. It showed Sarah saying, "This is our private gate." It showed him grabbing her wrist when she tried to call me. Lane watched it once, then a second time. Then he looked at the man with the badge. Did you touch her? The man shifted. She was obstructing an inspection. Did you touch her? I guided her hand away. Sarah said, "No, you grabbed me." Diane snapped. Sarah, don't exaggerate. That was her second mistake. People like Diane cannot help themselves. They always need to control the room, even when the room has a deputy in it. Lane wrote something down. Then I said, "Deputy, can you ask who issued their badges?" The fake officer looked at me. Diane looked at me. Lane looked at the badge again. "Who issued that?" The man said, "Our company." "What company?" "Whitaker Community Safety." I watched Diane's face for half a second. There it was. A tiny flinch. Whitaker. Same last name. I did not react. I did not smile. I just stored it. Deputy Lane asked if they had paperwork showing a right to enter my property or access my gate. Diane produced a copy of the violation notice. Lane read it. Then he looked at me. "This says parcel 17B-442. I nodded. "That's not my parcel." "What's yours?" 18C-901. Diane said. The map was updated internally. Lane looked at her. "County records are not updated internally by an HOA." That sentence landed harder than a shout. Diane did not like it. She collected her papers and said, "Fine. We'll handle this through the board and legal counsel." Then she looked at Sarah. "You're making this much harder than it needs to be." I stepped forward 1 pace. Not toward Diane. Toward Sarah. "Don't speak to my wife again today." Diane's eyes lit up like she had been waiting for that. "See? Threatening." Deputy Lane looked up from his notebook. "No, ma'am. That was a boundary." For the first time that morning, Diane had nothing to say. The fake officers left with her. The deputy stayed behind long enough to take Sarah's statement. When he was done, he looked at me and said, "Mr. Mercer, I'm not saying this is over, but based on what I saw, they had no business touching that gate." "It's not over," I said. He looked down the road where Diane's car had disappeared. "No," he said, "I don't think it is." That afternoon, I searched Whitaker Community Safety. The company had been formed 6 months earlier. No real office listed, no staff page, no licensing information on the website, just stock photos of smiling guards and a paragraph about modern residential enforcement solutions. I did not know yet who owned it, but I knew Diane had not sent random security guards to my road. She had sent someone she expected to obey her. By sundown, Diane had already started rewriting the story. That is what people like her do. They do not wait for facts. They get there first, then hope everyone else gets tired before the truth catches up. At 6:12 p.m., a neighbor forwarded me an email Diane had sent to the entire Willow Ridge community. The subject line read, "Urgent Safety Update. Black Pine Access Issue." It said an outside property owner was refusing to cooperate with emergency safety procedures. It said my gate could delay fire response. It said HOA authorized personnel had been verbally threatened while conducting a routine inspection. It said my wife had become agitated and uncooperative. That part made Sarah go quiet. She read it once. Then she set the phone down and walked to the sink, even though there were no dishes there. I wanted to call Diane right then. I wanted to tell her exactly what kind of person uses a woman's fear as a line item in a neighborhood email. But I didn't. I had learned a long time ago that anger feels useful, right up until it becomes someone else's evidence. So I opened the folder. I saved the email. I printed it. Then I highlighted 3 phrases. Outside property owner. HOA authorized personnel. Verbally threatened. I wrote the time and date at the top. Sarah turned around from the sink. "You're doing the file thing." "Yes." "Does it help?" "It keeps me from doing the stupid thing." She almost smiled. The next morning, Diane sent another notice. This one was labeled, "Final Compliance Demand." It threatened a $500 per day fine if I did not provide the gate code within 48 hours. I was not in the HOA. They could not find me. But Diane knew most people do not know the difference between a real bill and an official-looking threat. She copied 3 board members, the property manager, and someone listed as counsel for Willow Ridge. The letter said the gate created visual blight, neighborhood safety concerns, and restricted common access. Common access. That phrase mattered. There is a difference between wanting access and claiming access. Wanting access is pressure. Claiming access is a legal position. And if Diane was taking a legal position, she was going to need records. But before I went to the county office, Diane made her next mistake. 2 days after the final demand, Sarah found a green metal sign bolted near the edge of our road. Community emergency access. Nobody had asked. Nobody had permission. At the bottom corner was a small sticker. Whitaker Community Safety. Sarah stood beside it with her arms folded. She put a sign on our road. "Near our road," I said. "What's the difference?" "The difference is what she wants me to do." Sarah looked at me. "Take it down?" "On camera," I said, "so she can call me destructive." So I did not touch it. I photographed it from 4 angles. I measured the distance from the property marker. I recorded the sticker. Then I added it to the file. That afternoon, I drove to the county recorder's office. Not because I couldn't search online. I could. But sometimes a physical record room tells you things a website will not. The clerk was an older woman named Marlene. She wore reading glasses on a chain and looked like she could smell nonsense through paper. I gave her my parcel number. She pulled the file. Then I gave her Willow Ridge's boundary records. She pulled those too. For 20 minutes, we compared maps. My road did not cross into the HOA. My gate did not sit on HOA land. There was no recorded access easement, no emergency corridor, no agreement giving Willow Ridge the right to use Black Pine Road. Marlene tapped the paper with one finger. Somebody drew on this copy. She pointed to the version Diane had attached to the violation letter. A line had been added in black ink. It cut across the corner of my property and connected to the subdivision path. It was labeled Community Access, but it was not on the recorded map. It was hand-drawn. That was the second crack. I bought certified copies of everything. When I got home, Sarah was at the kitchen table with her laptop open. "You need to see this." She had gone deeper into Whitaker Community Safety. The website still looked fake, but the state business registration was real. Registered agent, Martin Kell. I did not recognize the name. Sarah did. She had found him on Diane's social media. Family barbecue photos. Christmas photos. A birthday post from Diane. Happy birthday to the best brother-in-law a woman could ask for. Sarah looked at me. She's paying her family? Maybe. With HOA money? Maybe. All this for our gate? I shook my head. No. Our gate is in the way of something. What something? I looked at the hand-drawn line again. I don't know yet. But I knew one thing. People hiding something do not back off when you catch one lie. They escalate. 2 days later, Deputy Lane came back. This time, he did not come alone. A second cruiser followed him up the road. For about 5 seconds, I felt the old familiar weight in my chest. Not fear, calculation. 2 cruisers means someone framed the call in a way that sounded dangerous. I stepped onto the porch before they knocked. Sarah stood behind me with one hand on the doorframe. Lane looked uncomfortable. Mr. Mercer, we received a complaint. From Diane Whitaker? He did not answer directly. The report says you threatened 2 HOA officers and made statements about using military training against them. Sarah said. That is a lie. Lane nodded once, like he already suspected it. The second deputy did not nod. He watched me carefully. I could see the story Diane had built in his head before he even got out of the car. Retired military. Gate dispute. Threats. Possible escalation. That is how people like Diane win at first. They do not need to prove the whole lie. They only need to use the right words to make the system lean in their direction. I need to ask the questions, Lane said. I understand, the second deputy said. Sir, for now, keep your hands visible. Sarah's face changed. I nodded. Of course. I hated that moment. Not because the deputy was wrong to be careful. Because Diane's lie had already reached my porch. I invited both deputies to stand where they could see the camera feed. I have the full footage from the gate, I said. Unedited. 3 angles. Audio included. Lane nodded. Show us. For the next 12 minutes, nobody spoke except the people on the recording. They watched the fake officers block Sarah. They watched Diane direct them. They watched me stay on the porch. They watched me keep my hands visible. They watched Diane say, see? Threatening. After I told her not to speak to my wife again that day. The second deputy's expression changed first. Not dramatically. Just enough. The story Diane had sold him started falling apart. Lane took out the written complaint. Then he compared it to the video. The complaint says you approached the officers aggressively. I didn't leave the porch until after you arrived. It says you shouted threats. I did not. It says Mrs. Mercer refused to identify herself. Sarah let out a short laugh with no humor in it. I was in my own driveway. The second deputy looked toward the gate. Are you in the HOA, sir? No. Any shared access agreement? No. Any easement? I just got certified copies from county records. I handed them over. Lane read the first page, then the second. The other deputy looked at the county map. This road is yours? Yes. All the way to the county marker? Yes. He looked toward the gate again. So what are they trying to access? That was the right question. I don't know yet, I said. Lane closed his notebook. Mr. Mercer, based on the footage, I'm going to supplement the report. What does that mean? It means Diane's version does not match the evidence. Sarah exhaled for the first time in minutes. Then Lane said something that stayed with me. People throw around the word officer because it scares folks. But it creates problems when the person wearing the badge has no authority. I looked at him. Can private security call themselves officers? That depends on how they represent themselves, he said. But if they imply law enforcement authority, threaten obstruction, or try to compel access to private property, that's a problem. The second deputy added, and if they came onto private land after being told not to, that's another problem. Before they left, Lane looked at the green sign near the road. Did you put that there? No. He took a photo of it. So did I. After they drove away, Sarah sat on the porch steps. Her hands were still trembling a little. I sat beside her. I hate that she can just say things, Sarah said. I know. And then we have to prove they're false. I looked down the road. That's why we keep proving. That evening, another neighbor sent me something. A screenshot from the Willow Ridge resident portal. A new charge had appeared on every homeowner's account. Special safety assessment. $400. Under the description, it said, Security Patrol. Emergency access compliance. Gate enforcement. Gate enforcement. On a gate the HOA did not own. I stared at those 2 words for a long time. Then I opened a new folder inside the first one. I named it Money Trail. The thing about fraud is that it usually starts with language. Not money. Language. People do not begin by saying, I'm going to take your money and give it to my family. They say safety. They say compliance. They say community. They say emergency. Then they send an invoice. The Willow Ridge special assessment was $400 per house. There were 118 homes in the HOA. That meant Diane had collected $47,200 for security patrol and gate enforcement. Again, on a gate the HOA did not own. I printed the screenshot and added it to the file. Then I started looking backward. HOA minutes, budget notes, meeting summaries, vendor approvals. Most of it was boring, and that is how bad things hide. Nobody reads a 4-page PDF called Supplemental Safety Initiative unless they have a reason. I had a reason. 3 months before Diane ever walked up my road, the HOA board had approved something called the North Corridor Safety Plan. I remembered Diane mentioning the North Corridor that first day. Now I knew why. The plan mentioned expanded recreational access, community trail continuity, future amenity connectivity, and there was a map attached. The same hand-drawn line cut through my property. Not a county line, not a surveyed line. A wish, a black marker wish. The line connected Willow Ridge to a wooded area behind my land. I knew that area. It was an undeveloped tract owned by a real estate group out of Charlotte. I searched that too. 2 weeks earlier, the group had filed preliminary plans for a walking trail, a dog park, and a future clubhouse expansion. And the shortest route from Willow Ridge to that future amenity ran straight past my gate. Now it made sense. Diane did not care about fire trucks. Fire and sheriff already had a real contact protocol. Diane cared about access. If she could pressure me into opening the gate under the language of safety, she could later claim the road had become part of a community access pattern, not legal ownership. But enough confusion to bully, delay, and maybe force a settlement. I had seen that kind of thing before in different clothes. Pressure first, paperwork later. By midnight, I had a timeline spread across the dining room table. Sarah sat across from me with a yellow highlighter. "Say it simple," she said. "What? What is she doing?" "Pretend I'm a neighbor who doesn't understand deeds and maps." I looked at the papers. "She wants our road because it makes her expansion plan more valuable." Sarah nodded. "And the fake security company? She's using safety as the excuse to collect money and enforce access. And the company belongs to her brother-in-law. Registered to him." "Yes." Sarah highlighted Martin Kell's name. "So she scares residents, charges them for safety, pays her family, and uses the patrol to pressure us." I looked at her. "That's pretty simple." She pushed the highlighter toward me. "Then that's what people need to understand." The next morning, I called my closing attorney, Rebecca Shaw. Rebecca was not dramatic. She had the calm voice of someone who had ruined many dishonest people's mornings with correctly filed documents. I sent her everything: the deed, the county map, the violation letters, the fake badge screenshot, the police complaint, the HOA assessment, the business registration, the hand-drawn access line, the photo of the green sign. She called me back 2 hours later. "Caleb," she said, "do not talk to Diane directly anymore." I wasn't planning to. This is bigger than a gate dispute. I figured. Their documents are making claims about land they do not control. Their security company is using language that creates the impression of authority. And if residents are being charged for enforcement against your property, the board needs to hear this in public. They scheduled a meeting? You haven't seen the notice? I checked my email. There it was, forwarded from another neighbor. Neighborhood safety meeting. Agenda item 3. Black Pine Gate noncompliance and emergency access enforcement. Diane had scheduled it for Thursday night at the community center. She was going to put my gate on a screen in front of the whole neighborhood. She was going to make me the villain in public. Rebecca asked, "Are you going?" I looked at Sarah. She looked tired, but she did not look scared anymore. "Yes," I said. "I'm going." Rebecca said, "Good. Bring certified copies." I looked at the table full of papers. "I'll bring the file." For the next 2 days, I did not argue. I did not reply to Diane's emails. I did not post on the neighborhood forum. I did not call board members one by one, trying to convince them. That was what Diane expected. She expected me to get defensive. She expected me to sound angry. She expected me to look like the unstable outsider she had been describing. Instead, I built the file. Not a pile of random papers. A record. The first section answered one question. Who owns the road? Certified deed. County parcel map. Surveyor's note. No easement search. Photos of the gate inside the boundary. That section destroyed the access claim. The second section answered another question. What actually happened at the gate? Violation notices. Emails. Police complaint. Camera stills. Sarah's statement. Deputy Lane's supplemental report. That section destroyed the false complaint. The third section answered the question Diane did not want anyone asking. Who was getting paid? The safety assessment. Board minutes. North Corridor Safety Plan, Whitaker Community Safety Registration, Vendor Approval, Map with the hand-drawn access line. That section destroyed the safety story. Rebecca reviewed everything and added a cover letter short enough for normal people to understand. That mattered. A lot of people lose true arguments because they bury them under details. The truth has to be simple enough to survive a noisy room. Rebecca's letter said, Black Pine Road is private property. Willow Ridge HOA has no recorded easement, access agreement, or enforcement authority over the gate. Any statement to the contrary is not supported by county records. Plain, clean, heavy. On Thursday afternoon, Sheriff Donnelly called me. I hear there's a safety meeting tonight. Yes, sir. I also hear my department's name has been used in a few conversations about forcing your gate open. That would be news to me. And to me, he said. I waited. He continued. I'll be there. I did not ask him to come. That mattered too. If Diane wanted public authority, she was going to get it. Just not the kind she expected. Before we left, Sarah stood in front of the hallway mirror, fixing her hair even though it already looked fine. You don't have to come, I said. She looked at me through the mirror. Yes, I do. Sarah, she used me in her story. I'm not letting her be the only woman in the room talking about what happened to me. So we went together. The Willow Ridge Community Center looked like every HOA building I had ever seen. Beige walls, folding chairs, bad coffee, a bulletin board full of cheerful announcements covering quiet resentment. About 70 people showed up. More than I expected. Diane had done her work. I could feel people looking at us when we walked in. Some were curious, some were hostile, some were embarrassed. The two fake officers were there too, standing near the side wall in their uniforms. The man who had grabbed Sarah's wrist would not look at us. Martin Kell was there as well, wearing a polo shirt with the Whitaker Community Safety logo stitched over the chest. Now everyone could see the connection without me saying a word. Diane sat at the front table with 3 board members. Sheriff Donnelly stood in the back of the room. Diane saw him and smiled. That was how confident she was. She thought the sheriff's presence made her look legitimate. She opened the meeting with a speech about neighborhood safety. She talked about emergency response. She talked about rising security concerns. She talked about difficult outside property owners refusing reasonable cooperation. Then she clicked a remote. A photo of my gate appeared on the screen. There, she said, is the obstruction. Sarah's hand tightened around mine. Diane turned to the room. This gate could cost lives, people murmured. Then she looked right at me. Mr. Mercer, would you like to explain to this community why your personal preference matters more than our safety? That was the trap. She wanted me emotional. She wanted me defensive. She wanted me loud. I stood up with the first section of the file in my hand. No, I said. I'd like the sheriff to ask one question first. Diane blinked. Sheriff Donnelly pushed off the back wall and walked toward the front. The room went quiet. He stopped in front of the fake officers. Then he pointed at the badge on one man's chest. Who issued that? And just like that, Diane's meeting stopped belonging to her. The man with the badge looked at Martin Kell. Martin looked at Diane. Diane looked at Sheriff Donnelly. Nobody looked at the badge. That told the room everything before anyone said a word. Sheriff Donnelly waited. He was good at waiting. Finally, Martin cleared his throat. It's company identification. The sheriff nodded. Company identification that says officer? Martin's face turned red. It's a standard security title. No, the sheriff said. Security guard is a title. Patrol agent is a title. Officer is a word that creates an impression. And when your employee uses that word while ordering someone to open a private gate, that impression becomes a problem. Diane jumped in. Sheriff, this is a misunderstanding. These men are part of our safety initiative. Donnelly turned to her. Did you instruct them to identify themselves as HOA officers? They are authorized by the board. That was not my question. The same sentence Deputy Lane had used. Diane's mouth closed. The sheriff removed the badge from the man's chest. The man let him. That was another thing people noticed. Donnelly placed the badge on the front table. It made a small sound. Cheap metal on plastic. Then he looked at the room. For clarity, these men are not law enforcement officers. They are not county officers. They have no authority to compel access to private property. A murmur moved through the chairs. Diane tried again. But the gate is an emergency access issue. I opened the first section of the file. No, it isn't. She pointed at me. This is exactly the hostility I've been warning people about. I did not answer her. I handed the certified deed to Sheriff Donnelly. Then the county map. Then the no easement record. He looked through them. Then he held up the map so the front row could see it. Black Pine Road is private property, he said. There is no recorded access easement for Willow Ridge HOA. I added, actual emergency services already had a contact protocol. Fire and sheriff could reach us. Diane's HOA could not. A man in the second row raised his hand. Then why were we charged a safety assessment for gate enforcement? That was the moment Diane's face changed. Not anger, fear. Because now the residents were no longer looking at me. They were looking at her. I opened the money section. This is the assessment notice, I said. This is the board approval for Whitaker Community Safety. This is the state business registration. Martin Kell is the registered agent. Someone in the back said, "Isn't that Diane's brother-in-law?" Martin stood up. "This is inappropriate." Sheriff Donnelly looked at him. "Sit down." Martin sat. Then Sarah stood. Her voice was not loud, but it carried. "One of your security men grabbed my wrist at our gate while Diane stood there and called me non-compliant." The room went still. Diane said, "That is an exaggeration." I connected my laptop to the projector. I did not say a word. I played the footage. 3 angles. Sarah's car. The men blocking her. The hand on the keypad. Sarah reaching for her phone. The man grabbing her wrist. Diane saying she's being non-compliant. Then the final part. Diane looking toward my porch and saying, "See?" Threatening, after I told her not to speak to my wife again. When the video ended, nobody moved. Not one person. The sheriff looked at Diane. "You filed a complaint stating Mr. Mercer aggressively approached your personnel and threatened them." Diane swallowed. "That was based on what I was told." The room reacted to that, because the video had shown her standing 5 feet away. I opened the conduct section and placed the police complaint on the table. "Your wording is in the complaint," I said. "Almost word for word from your violation notice." A board member leaned toward Diane. "Diane, did you tell us there was an easement?" Diane snapped. "There was an internal map." I put that map on the projector. The hand-drawn line appeared across my land. Then I put the county-recorded map beside it. No line. Sheriff Donnelly stepped forward. "An internal HOA map does not create property rights." That sentence broke the room open. People started talking at once. How much did we pay them? Who approved this? Why is her family getting the contract? Were we lied to about the trail too? Diane raised both hands. "Everyone calm down. This is a coordinated attack by an anti-community outsider. That might have worked an hour earlier. Not now." Now the badge was on the table. The deed was on the table. The video had played. The map was on the screen. And Sarah was standing in front of everyone. No longer a line in Diane's email. A woman. A neighbor. A person they had been told to fear. The HOA treasurer, a thin man named Robert Hale, stood up slowly. He had been quiet all night. Now he was looking at the assessment notice, like it had turned poisonous in his hands. "Until this is reviewed," he said. "No more payments go to Whitaker Community Safety." Diane turned on him. "You can't do that in the middle of a meeting." Robert looked at the badge on the table. Then at the map. Then at Sarah. "Actually," he said, "I should have done it before this meeting started." A woman in the front row said, "Suspend her authority." Diane said, "Excuse me?" Another resident stood. "I second that." A board member looked shaken, but he nodded. "Pending audit," he said. "We need an emergency vote." Diane's face went white. Sheriff Donnelly picked up the fake badge. "Mrs. Whitaker, my office will be reviewing the complaint you filed, the actions of this security company, and any representation that suggested law enforcement authority. Until further notice, these individuals are not to enter Mr. Mercer's property or approach his gate." Then he looked at Martin. "That includes you." Martin nodded quickly. Diane whispered something to the board secretary. The secretary moved away from her. That was the real collapse. Not the sheriff. Not the badge. Not even the video. It was the moment Diane reached for the power she thought she had, and nobody handed it back. The next morning, the green community access sign disappeared. Not by magic. The county removed it. I watched from the porch as a county truck pulled up near the road. A worker stepped out, unscrewed the sign, dropped it into the back of the truck, and left. Sometimes justice looks like a courtroom. Sometimes it looks like a man in a reflective vest removing 2 screws. 3 days later, the HOA board formally suspended Diane pending an audit. A week after that, Whitaker Community Safety's contract was frozen. The sheriff's office issued written trespass warnings to Martin Kell and both men who had come to our gate. The board sent residents an email admitting that Willow Ridge had no recorded right to access Black Pine Road. It was not really an apology. HOA boards seem allergic to plain apologies. But it was public, and public mattered. The special safety assessment was placed under review. Later, most of it was refunded. Not all at once. not without arguments, but enough for people to understand what had happened. Diane had used fear to collect money. She had used safety to hide access. She had used the word community to make control sound generous. And for a while, people believed her. That part mattered too, because Diane did not do it alone. She needed neighbors willing to accept a scary story about an outsider. She needed board members who did not read maps. She needed residents who saw a gate and assumed the person demanding it open must have a right to it. 2 weeks later, an older man named Frank came up our road. He stopped outside the gate and called instead of entering. That alone told me he had learned something. I opened the gate and met him halfway. He held a folder in one hand. "My wife and I paid that assessment," he said. "I voted for Diane twice." I said nothing. He looked embarrassed. "She told us you were blocking fire access." "I know. I should have checked." "Yes," I said. "You should have." He nodded. Then he handed me the folder. Inside were copies of older HOA notices, including one from the year before about a future trail expansion fund. "I think she was planning this longer than people realize," he said. He was right. The audit later found Diane had pushed multiple payments toward companies connected to friends or relatives. Landscaping, security, consulting, planning. Nothing huge by itself. That was the trick. Small enough to seem boring, repeated enough to matter. The county did not turn our road into a trail. The HOA did not get our gate code. The fake officers did not come back. And Sarah started sleeping better. That was the part I cared about most. One Saturday morning, I found her by the gate with a paintbrush. She had taken down the old private road sign and replaced it with a new one she made herself. Black letters on white cedar. Private road. No HOA access without written permission. Below that, in smaller letters, she had painted, "Deliveries call first." I laughed when I saw it. She looked over her shoulder. "What? Deliveries call first? I'm not trying to fight the UPS guy." That was the first time she joked about the gate. So yes, Diane lost her position. Yes, the board got audited. Yes, the residents learned their safety assessment had been used to fund a family-connected security company. Yes, the sheriff exposed the fake badges in front of everyone. But the real ending was quieter than that. It was Sarah standing at our gate without flinching when a car slowed down. It was the road staying silent unless we invited someone in. It was the new HOA policy that finally said emergency access meant real emergency services, not private contractors with fake titles. Months later, the new HOA president asked if I would help draft a boundary respect policy for Willow Ridge. I almost said no. Then Sarah said, "Help the normal ones. They're the ones who got lied to." So I did. The policy was simple. No HOA representative could enter private non-HOA land without written permission. No contractor could use titles implying law enforcement authority. All access claims had to be supported by recorded county documents, not internal maps. And any emergency access plan had to be coordinated with actual emergency services. Real authority, real records, real boundaries. Diane moved 6 months later. Nobody threw a party, but nobody begged her to stay either. The last time I saw her, she was loading boxes into a white SUV, while Martin Kell stood on the sidewalk pretending not to know me. She looked at our road once. Just once. The gate was closed. The new sign was up. The cameras were still recording. And for the first time since she had walked onto my property with that clipboard, Diane did not say a word. That was fine with me. A clipboard can make noise. A fake badge can scare people. A crowd can believe the wrong story for a while. But paper does not shout. Real records do not panic. And a private gate, on private land, does not open just because someone with fake authority demands the code. Sarah stood at that gate while the new sign dried in the sun. Private road. No HOA access without written permission. The cameras were still recording. The county records were still clear. And the gate stayed locked. Diane came for our property with a clipboard and a fake badge. She left without the gate code, without the contract, and without her power.